Hi, welcome back to Legally Bound. Andy and Katie again, obviously. So we're here today. We want to talk about politics. I know that sounds like we've all been talking about that, and what else are we going to say? But I have something that I think we should share, and I'm going to put it out there. So this is what I'm going to say. I don't know if everybody knows this, but you don't have to affiliate yourself with one of the two main political parties. It's okay to take each issue on a case-by-case basis and have opinions that are not consistent with one party that you might have previously agreed with, and vice versa. And that's totally
and to
okay.
attach more or less priority to that issue.
Exactly. And so I don't know if you've all noticed as much as we have working in the industry we are, but it's become very, very polarized, probably more than ever before on partisan lines, meaning if you're a Democrat, you're all in, you have to believe everything that they're espousing, they being the left or the Democratic Party, and same with the right. If you are a Republican, unless you're going to be essentially kind of leaving the party, you have to support Trump and everything he stands for, and you have to buy into every position of that party. If you don't, and you're kind of left in the middle, I think you're in pretty good company. I think there's a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people, if we're really counting, that really wish that there was a way to combine their views, their reasonable views. And why is it that these parties exist that have such extreme opposing views? So I'm going to let Andy talk about this. He's got lots of experience in political science, and he has really given me a lot to think about in this regard. So why is this two-party system so meaningful to the country, and what are our options?
Well, in a two-party political system where we do a winner-take-all voting scheme, which I don't think is the wrong scheme, but it does have the natural consequence of creating two parties. That means that both parties, in order to continue to exist, and at the end of the day, all things seek to continue to exist. The idea here is that both parties, in order to continue to exist, must find opposition with the other party. If one party starts taking on this idea of relenting or accepting the other party's position, it will chip away at what that party stands for, and then the other party will have more
consumed them.
Exactly, it'll have more and more and more of these qualities that will take on more and more of the voters, and the other party will cease to exist. And so these parties both have to pick and choose their issues based on keeping a consistent portion of the population and some semblance of connection to their ideology, although I think in many examples that is way out the window. So you have this need to continue to rival on, that there must be opposition, otherwise you'll cease to exist in that identity, in that party, and then the other party will continue to win every election going forward.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay.
And there's good examples of when it has not been that way.
I feel like we all, let's just call us the reasonable people of America, put myself in that group, and with a lot of other people, we're kind of forced to, if you so choose, pick a side, and then you're kind of swept into like the extremes. Like even if you don't personally believe it, the party exists only for the extreme version of their position.
Well, that's where the money is. That's where the support is. And so, that's where the advocates
people are kind of agreeing like reluctantly, I think, or like begrudgingly in some cases, because it's like, well, this kind of mostly fits. And I've seen a lot of those memes about, oh, a political party or a vote isn't, it's not a marriage. It's like a bus ticket. If it's not going exactly to your destination, you go to the one that's taking you a little bit closer. Isn't that kind of sad, though, that that's our option? We don't have anything that actually we can feel
that
good about.
Promotes ideas
at least for people that are
better
in the middle.
thought, of better moderate thought, of reasonable thought, where we're not attaching ourselves to one extreme or the other. Exactly.
We're condoning that and saying, well, I don't really feel that extreme, and most people
I know are not. And the politicians are addicted to it because that's, again, where the money and the support come from. Without it, they don't have the support of the party, especially those that are energized.
Because they know that they have to be strong in their positions, otherwise they'll be eaten up.
Right. So one of the things I work on quite a bit in the time that I spend away from doing legal things and the time I spend on political things is writing about new ideology, new ways to think about politics. And I think that what I hear right now, what I've heard my whole life really, is that there is a demand for moderation, for moderates, for reasonableness, for a idea centered on what we can do today, the best that we can do without it being exaggerated, without it being extreme. Why can't we all come together and just exist?
I really wonder that. Is that possible?
It is.
Given the position
there's got to be
people in this
energy
country.
there, though, and that
Yes.
I see that in the lead up to the election. A lot of people on Facebook or Instagram, they're crying out for, why isn't there somebody reasonable? I just see myself like this. I'm not finding any connection with the political candidates, or they kind of go back and forth between their party affiliations. You can see that over the years with some of the people that you know on Instagram. They kind of go to the other side because they've found some sort of new connection to some sort of new identity. And I think the thing that's missing ultimately is this energy from people who just want to talk reasonably
and that's okay.
about the issues.
And it's gotten to the point, I will say, from personal experience, that even if you say something reasonable that's contrary to an extreme position, you are completely ostracized and shouted down and all this sort of things. And that should not be the case. You should not be afraid. Nobody should be afraid to speak reason, to speak realistically about things, to speak in terms that are honest. I don't think that that's right at all. I have had specific experiences saying very reasonable things that people didn't like, and I was pretty appalled by the response. I don't think we should normalize that. I think it's been normalized for far too long. I think it teaches our children the wrong thing. I know that sounds like such a line, but it's true. I see it all the time, these hostile normalizations, which I think are, I mean, a lot of it is attributed to the internet. People are very, fearless behind the keyboard, trolling and all that sort of thing. That happens a lot. But even in real life, it's bled over. There's tons and tons of violence, and it seems to be even condoned, especially, I'll just say, if you're wearing a MAGA hat or if you're supporting Trump outwardly, it becomes acceptable, at least in the media's eyes, to attack people physically.
Well, I think the right has a lot of physical anger towards the left. Showing up at rallies with guns is a mode of intimidation. To the whole bicycle gang, Proud Boy thing, bicycle gang, motorcycle gang. That type of approach to it has a very aggressive
on both
communication
sides
as well.
It should not be normalized. We, the people of the middle, let's just say that. I'm going to put myself there too.
I appreciate you coming to the middle. I'll invite you in. If you get it, you get it.
We need to radicalize ourselves and say, we're not going to stand up for that. We're not going to allow that to be the way that this discourse continues. And I think that's really what I have heard from a lot of people and feel myself. Why can't we have a reasonable conversation? There's always a reasonable solution to anything, whether it is the most obvious thing, or you have to work at it, or it makes some people happy but not everybody. I mean, that's kind of the nature of any decision, but the extremes are far out of control, and it doesn't have to be that way, right?
It doesn't. And I'll give you kind of one line to win every political conversation you find yourself in the middle of. And I think that the conversation starts with your political opinions about specific issues aren't connected to a specific party. And so your opinions will vary as the issues vary. And I think you have to admit that up front. I think the next thing that you say is, I pick my candidates based on how they think versus what they say they think. I'm a big believer that the people that we put in office should be people that you have faith in with regard to the way that they think. So if you are talking about a candidate who is espousing or pushing for left-wing type of ideas that are going to limit free speech and limit other sorts of inherent constitutional rights, really deviate away from the civil liberties that we all have, that's not a candidate for you. On the other extreme, and excuse me for evoking an image of Trump, but if the person who's in office or the person who we're talking about doesn't exhibit the sort of statesmanly character that you're looking for in a politician, because you believe that America should be represented in a certain way, whether the actual policies are a little bit more beneficial controversial this way or that way. If you have a problem with the way somebody approaches these issues, I think that's how you decide your politics. You tell people that. And I think it's really tough for people to fight with you about how you think of somebody else's thought. And it's put to bed.
That's actually very true. And the other thing is, this isn't necessarily, and I think we've talked about this, the idea that there has to be another candidate, because realistically there's not. But if people actually voice their opinion that they're not going to accept the extremes, that they are looking for something that's actually reasonable and plausible, then it will force the parties that do exist to actually respond to that instead of responding to these
to attend to those groups of people.
And that's because people in the middle are, by their nature, staying out of it. But it's time to stop staying out of it. Speak up, say what's right, say what you feel, and I mean, obviously you can be attacked for that.
The uprising of the moderates. That's what we're talking about here. There needs to be an uprising of the voices of people who believe in reasonableness, which typically means people who want to stay away from extremes. But we got to be heard.
Speak out against them.
We've got to be heard. Until next time, we are legally bound.